On the day of my sister's engagement party, I sat in the banquet hall closest to the restroom, sharing a folding chair with a cleaner. It wasn't that I didn't have an invitation. My mother had personally thrown that invitation printed with Jason Emily engagement dinner into the trash bin right in front of me. "Dress like you're attending a funeral," she said as she passed by, her eyes full of disdain. "Don't embarrass your sister." I was wearing a black dress, the same one I wore 8 years ago when Jason first took me to the company annual party. He said I looked best in black. He also promised to give me a dream wedding by the Hudson River in New York. Now, he was standing on the stage, holding a glass of champagne and introducing his fiancée to the guests, my half-sister, Emily. "We sparked a connection during an overseas business trip," Jason spoke eloquently. "She made me understand what true compatibility means." The entire audience applauded. My parents sat in the front row, smiling as if they had won the lottery. My mother occasionally turned her head to fix my sister's hair, and she didn't forget to boast to the guests, "Emily is really impressive. She landed the most stable son-in-law in our family." I remembered 8 years ago when he knelt in the kitchen of my apartment with a ring box and asked me, "Will you marry me and endure hardship with me?" I tearfully agreed and even gave up my job offer in San Francisco to stay in Los Angeles and support him in starting his business. Now, I am the one who endured 8 years of hardship, only to be cleanly cast aside and replaced by a more socially compatible version. After several rounds of drinks, my sister Emily walked over with a glass of champagne. "Sis, thank you for stepping aside," she said with an elegant smile. "Actually, Jason was originally supposed to marry you, but as you know, Mom doesn't like your rebellious personality. Dad also said you're too capable and would overshadow your husband." I stared at her sparkling diamond ring and smiled sarcastically. "Does your ex-husband know you're so eloquent?" She raised her eyebrows slightly, looking indifferent. "Nathan, we divorced a long time ago. He's too low-class, 30 years old and still without a stable job, driving around in some beat-up RV every day. He's either experimenting with some app or drinking cheap beer with broke engineers. How could I possibly tie myself to someone like him for life?" I stared at her. "You're trying to steal my fiancé, and now you want me to take the man you don't want. It's not like you're getting any younger," she said coldly. "You're 33, I'm 27. If you still want to get married, Nathan is your best option. At least he has a handsome face, can cook, is obedient, and doesn't spend money recklessly." She spoke as if she were doing me a favor. "You two are a good match." Before the banquet ended, my dad suddenly called me to the small balcony for a talk, holding a cigarette. His tone was more natural than anyone else's. "Nathan has agreed to meet you, although he's not doing well now. Don't look down on him. At least Emily divorced him legally, so you're not picking up the pieces." "Why me?" I asked. "Don't you want to have a family?" he asked. "Jason is already your sister's, and now we can't treat Nathan too unfairly. You two sisters swapping partners balances things out." I smiled bitterly and nodded. "All right." 2 days later, I went to that small cafe in the suburbs of Los Angeles as agreed. Nathan was wearing a plaid shirt and had lost a lot of weight since I last saw him, but his expression was calmer. He understood my purpose as soon as he saw me and, without wasting words, took a document out of his backpack and placed it on the table. "Prenuptial agreement. My terms are all clearly stated here." I opened it and saw over a dozen pages filled with dense text, covering everything from income distribution and property ownership to personal privacy and arrangements for children's surnames. There was even a clause prohibiting third-party interference in the marriage. "You're very serious," I said. "Once you've been cheated, you have to learn to be smart," he said calmly. "I don't want a second time." I signed. He signed too. After the agreement was signed, he suddenly stood up and waved his hand. A few minutes later, a dark gray Rolls-Royce slowly approached, with a red license plate on the front indicating a private security fleet. The rear door opened, and a uniformed driver stepped out, respectfully calling out, "Chairman, please get in." Nathan glanced at me faintly. "Let's go. We need to prepare for the wedding." I was momentarily taken aback. "What did you say? Aren't you going to marry me?" He looked at me. "Then you should first know who you're marrying." The Rolls-Royce drove all the way to the heart of Beverly Hills in Los Angeles, where a heavy security gate automatically opened. Inside was a cliffside villa, with 3 private helicopters parked in the distance, on the fountain plaza in front of the door. More than a dozen staff members stood in 2 rows and shouted in unison as the car approached, "Welcome back, Chairman and Madam." My head buzzed. The penniless ex-husband my sister had described now stood at the center of power, surrounded like a Hollywood black-card billionaire. Nathan turned his head and said to me, "We've only just begun." Early the next morning, before I was fully awake, Secretary appeared at the door holding a neatly printed stack of documents. The chairman would like you to review the wedding budget and the draft media strategy. Sitting in the balcony suite on the third floor of the Lynn residence in Beverly Hills, my fingers still holding the unfinished cup of Earl Grey tea, I was already being swept along by the wedding preparations with no escape in sight. The documents were detailed to the point of obsession. From aerial photography, flight paths and camera placements to the list of floral suppliers and menu taste selections. It seemed even the guests' appetites had been preemptively accounted for. This isn't an ordinary wedding, it's a global showcase. Secretary spoke in his usual steady tone. The chairman expects you to be perfect in every shot that day. I turned to a page and was startled to see helicopter dispatch list: 8 helicopters, 1 each in Bel Air, Beverly Hills, Hollywood, Santa Monica, West Hollywood, Los Angeles International Airport, Orange County, and Malibu, and in the media distribution list. I saw Forbes, Bloomberg, Vogue, and even People. I stared at Secretary. Our engagement banquet is being broadcast globally. He nodded. I almost laughed out loud. My sister Emily wanted to marry me off to her poor ex-husband she didn't want, never expecting that I would become the bride the whole world is watching. At 11 a.m., Nathan personally drove me to the group's building. He was wearing a well-tailored dark gray suit, and although sunglasses covered half his face, they couldn't hide his commanding presence. In the floor-to-ceiling window conference room, more than a dozen executives in suits had been waiting for a long time. The theme of the meeting, wedding PR strategy. As soon as I sat down, I saw a face appear on the PowerPoint. Jason, Emily's newlywed husband, my ex-fiancé. Jason has repeatedly attempted to access the Dingsa West Coast Fund project through the company's PR resources, reported an executive. Considering you are about to become Mrs. Lynn, should we implement risk isolation? As I listened, I looked at the secretly taken photo of Jason on the PPT. He was at a cafe by the Santa Monica beach, trying to present a PPT to an investor, who happened to be a venture capital executive director under the Dingsa Group. Add him to the blacklist, Nathan said calmly. I turned my head in surprise, but he simply continued flipping to the next page. And then there's Emily. Recently, she applied to join the California Women in Wealth Alliance, and on her identity documents, she listed herself as Jason's wife, former entrepreneur. I let out a cold laugh. Before the meeting ended, Nathan looked at me and said, "You don't need to lift a finger. I'll remove the people who shouldn't be in your life for you." Later, I received a call from my mother. "Vivian, I heard you've been in touch with Nathan again recently." Her tone softened as soon as she spoke. "Your sister said you're getting married." I responded softly. "You didn't even tell the family," she sighed. "Back then, your sister had no choice. She didn't mean to take him from you." I was momentarily speechless, and also, she paused, "Your sister and Jason have just started their married life, so they're a bit tight on funds. I heard the man you're about to marry is doing quite well now. That house, could we borrow it to shoot a wedding commemorative video first?" I almost thought I had misheard. She continued, "Jason is the future hope of our family. He needs funds to invest and get things going. Emily is your sister after all. We can't just let her suffer, can we?" After a moment of silence, I said, "It's not convenient for me. How can you be so heartless?" Her expression instantly changed. "She followed you for 8 years, after all, and now your sister isn't being unreasonable. Can't you just compromise and help her out? She's right. You're so selfish." I hung up the phone, my fingers gripping it tightly. But my heart didn't ache at all. In fact, I felt somewhat relieved that I could finally use a marriage contract to shut out all this greed and false righteousness. The night before the engagement, Emily posted an update on Instagram. "Big sister finally has a home to marry into. Although it's not the top-tier match, I wish you happiness." The accompanying image is a street scene photo of an old, second-hand van parked in a working-class neighborhood, with a few blurred letters on the license plate, and Elaine. The moment I saw it, I was in the dressing room trying on my engagement gown. Before I could respond, Secretary walked in and said, "Time to leave. There will be over 500 media representatives and guests tonight. Please follow the entry procedure." I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and saw 8 helicopters slowly forming a formation in the distant sky. They swept over Beverly Hills in the glow of the setting sun, their golden rotors reflecting across the entire city. Beneath the golden light, I saw Emily and Jason standing outside the hotel, dressed in exquisite attire, waiting to witness my disheveled entrance. But when they saw me descend from the sky in a private helicopter, step onto the red carpet illuminated by flashing cameras, and hear the thunderous applause and the rapid shutter clicks of the reporters, their expressions froze instantly. I descended the spiral staircase and offered a faint smile to the cameras. The excitement from the engagement ceremony had not yet faded when, early the next morning, Nathan handed me a folder and said, "Vivian, we need to move forward with our wedding as soon as possible. The timeline has already been set." I opened the folder, and the first page read, "Proposed wedding date, 3 weeks from now. To be held at a private venue in Manhattan's Central Park." Just as I was about to raise an objection, he had already flipped to the next page. This is the prenuptial financial agreement. It must be signed today. The content was extremely detailed, not only specifying asset ownership after marriage but also including clauses on separate accounts, trust funds, charitable foundations, and preset plans for children's education and healthcare. This was not a hasty prenuptial agreement between an ordinary couple. It more closely resembled a cross-border corporate merger. Are you sure you want to be this formal? I raised an eyebrow. He looked at me calmly and said, the year Emily divorced me, she froze all the funds in my personal accounts and even tried to apply for debt consolidation without my knowledge. Vivian, I won't make the same mistake twice. I nodded and signed my name. After the signing was complete, he made a phone call. You can proceed with the arrangements. A few minutes later, the secretary walked in, holding several stacks of exquisitely packaged invitations. These are the custom-made, handcrafted invitations for the wedding guests. Here's a collector's edition for you. I took the invitation, but before I could take a closer look, the secretary handed me a list. This afternoon, there's a special business cocktail party. Mr. Jason and Emily will be attending. I was taken aback. How did they manage to get in? Jason is currently pitching an AI logistics project to several Wall Street funds, and it just so happens that the event is hosted by Ding's U.S. fund. He gave a faint smile. This cocktail party will also be the last time they ever step into this circle. At 4 in the afternoon, I arrived at that private club on the Upper East Side with Nathan. Jason, dressed in a dark blue suit, was chatting animatedly with a middle-aged investor in the bar area. Emily stood nearby, frequently batting her eyes at those around her, trying to catch the attention of someone higher up. When they saw Nathan and me, their expressions froze for a moment before they quickly composed themselves. Vivian, Emily said, picking up a glass of champagne and approaching me, congratulations, last night was really lively. Thank you for letting me have him back then, otherwise I wouldn't have realized how good my taste is. I replied with a faint smile. Jason coughed lightly. Vivian, you're doing quite well now. Whatever Nathan can give you, you just take it. What I want, you simply can't afford. My tone was gentle, but every word cut like a blade. But I wish you success with your AI logistics project. Don't forget to try a few smaller funds. Don't just focus on Dings's plate. It's not something you can handle. Emily's smile stiffened like a mask, and Jason's face turned pale as he muttered under his breath, you're getting a bit too arrogant. That's because you've forgotten how low I once stooped for you. I chuckled softly. From now on, it's my turn to make you look up to me. I had just turned around when Nathan had the secretary remove Jason and Emily's names from the guest system. After returning to the estate in Beverly Hills, I received a message from my mother. Your sister hasn't been doing well lately. Jason's project failed, and their house has been mortgaged. Can you persuade Nathan to invest a little? I didn't reply to her, but instead opened the audio archive I had saved. It was the conversation between Emily and my mother the night before Jason proposed. Anyway, she's so stubborn. She dragged Jason along for 8 years and still got nowhere. When the time comes, I'll use my methods to make him agree to switch partners. Don't worry. I have a way to get mom and dad on my side. When the time comes, they'll definitely force her to accept that lousy driver, Nathan. I packaged the recordings along with some evidence of Emily privately manipulating Jason's projects to fabricate performance results and sent them to the legal and finance departments of Dingza. 3 days later, Jason's startup was exposed on the front page of the Wall Street Journal for data fabrication and inflated project valuations. His assets were frozen, and even Emily's accounts were implicated in the investigation. The media was in an uproar. Emily called me late that night, her voice hysterical as she screamed, what do you want from me? All I did was marry your man, and now you want to ruin my entire life. The position you kicked me out of, I'm sitting in it just fine now, I said calmly, and the ex-husband you sent my way is far more valuable than you could ever imagine. She cried so hard on the other end of the line that her voice grew hoarse. I'm begging you, don't sue Jason. I forced him into it. He still loves you. I listened quietly and calmly replied, do you think I have any reason to cover for you now? The other end of the line went silent. I looked out at the night view of Beverly Hills. Nathan was sitting on the terrace reviewing financial reports. He glanced at me and raised an eyebrow. They came to plead for mercy. I nodded. He flipped through the pages and said coldly, they will suffer even more next, on the day of the wedding. The morning light broke over Los Angeles. Around the main mansion in Beverly Hills, 8 black private helicopters took off one after another, hovering over the estate. Each one bore the golden DZ Capital logo, shining brightly against the city skyline. Nathan sat in the control room, issuing a series of commands through his earpiece. Switch the live broadcast to the Hollywood channel. Position the aerial drones at guest entrance number 3. Have the secretarial team double-check the VIP credentials. As for me, dressed in a custom Givenchy haute couture wedding gown, I was surrounded by 6 stylists in the third-floor suite, being meticulously attended to from hair and makeup to jewelry, with every detail perfected to an almost exacting standard. The secretary knocked and entered, holding a guest confirmation form in hand. Miss Vivian. There's a small matter here. He spread out the list. Miss Chin, that is, your sister Emily, is trying to enter the viewing area, claiming to be your important relative. Should we let her in? I glanced at the photo. It was taken just outside the hotel. She was wearing a champagne-colored gown, heavily made up but looking haggard, pulling Jason as they argued outside the entrance. Clearly stopped by security, I smiled and said, no need to let her in, but arrange for the photography team to capture the footage. Understood. The secretary nodded. Jason is here too. She claims to be the original spouse and is trying to secure a speaking slot. I raised my hand, took a sip of champagne, and said calmly, she didn't lose her memory, she lost her integrity. At exactly 12 noon, the wedding officially began. Helicopters hovered at low altitude, and rose petals fell like rain, covering the entire crystal pathway leading to the ceremony venue. The guest seats were filled with top figures from various fields around the world, tech giants, political leaders, Hollywood producers, financial heavyweights, and even United Nations representatives, along with live broadcast teams from several international media outlets. Meanwhile, outside the estate's outer fence, Emily and Jason were stuck in the public viewing area, looking up at the live broadcast on the big screen alongside ordinary people. Emily's eyes were fixed on the moment I stepped onto the red carpet. Under the flash of cameras, I held Nathan's hand and walked through the white arch adorned with flowers, followed by over a dozen attendants holding parasols to shield us from the sun. As the live music began, the scene froze into a picture-perfect fairy tale. Her expression shifted from envy to anger, and finally twisted into disbelief. How dare she? She screamed at the security guard. He's my ex-husband. I'm his wife. She's just my sister, a substitute. The security guard calmly responded, ma'am, there is no place for you at this wedding. She pushed, roared, and shrieked like a madwoman. I'm Emily, Jason's legal wife. My sister is an unwanted leftover woman. She doesn't deserve. Just then, a pre-recorded clip suddenly cut in on the large screen. It was Nathan's personally recorded wedding eve message. I once loved the wrong person, placed my trust in someone who didn't deserve it. But it was because of that absurd marriage that I had the fortune to meet the real her. Vivian is the most deserving of protection in this world, and she is the greatest blessing in my life. I will use everything I have to make her the happiest bride in the world. At that moment, Emily froze. Everyone was stunned. Immediately, Nathan took a paper transfer slip from his pocket and handed it to the host, who read aloud. The bride price was transferred 24 hours before the wedding, amounting to a total of $500 million US. It will be used to establish the Vivian Personal Charity Fund, which will carry out women's entrepreneurship support projects in the bride's name every year thereafter. The entire audience erupted in thunderous applause. My parents were also restless in the guest seats. My mother's hands were tightly clenched into fists, her face full of disbelief. She had thought I had merely married a divorce driver. So how had I suddenly become the mistress of a multi-billion-dollar fund? As for Emily, she was completely stunned. She had thought she could rely on Jason to barely maintain a foothold in high society, but not only were they excluded, they had also become the most conspicuous joke of the entire event. To make matters worse, at the end of the wedding, Nathan announced an additional arrangement. For the evening banquet segment, we will host the Future Women Business Leaders Selection Ceremony, where my wife Vivian will make her first appearance as the Global Executive President of Women's Affairs at DZ Capital. That wasn't just a marriage, it was a complete ascent to the top of the social ladder. I turned and looked at the large screen in the audience area, my gaze piercing through the camera lens, precisely landing on Emily's face. Her lips were slightly parted. Her foundation had smeared into a mess, and the murmurs of the people around her filled her ears. Isn't she the ex-wife of the bride's ex-husband? How dare she show up, bringing shame upon herself? I smiled, not out of pride, but out of relief. 8 years ago, she snatched Jason from me, leaving me with the reputation of the jilted loser. 8 years later, I personally married the man she looked down on, receiving the respect she wasn't even qualified to give. At 10 p.m., the wedding banquet ended. I took off my custom-made wedding dress, changed into a silk nightgown, and sat in the dressing room. Nathan walked over and inserted a USB flash drive into the projector. The screen lit up, showing Emily's posts from her private social media before the wedding, screenshots of every comment she made kicking me while I was down, and the complete audio recordings of her attempts to collaborate with Jason to defraud Ding's fund. How do you plan to use these? I asked. Haven't decided yet, he said softly, taking my hand, but when you're ready, just let me know. I'll carry it out for you. Just 3 days after the wedding, the Los Angeles Times and Bloomberg Businessweek simultaneously published front-page reports. The rising star of the financial world, Vivian, makes a powerful entrance. Dingsa Capital has publicly confirmed for the first time that she is one of the future successors and is expected to take charge of the East Asia Market Investment Division next quarter. The headline image captures the moment I held Nathan's hand and walked down the aisle at our wedding, with the breathtaking scene of 8 helicopters circling in the background. This news not only caused a stir in the financial world but also triggered an internal upheaval within the Chen family. On Thursday, I was invited to attend a closed-door dinner hosted by the San Francisco Women Entrepreneurs Alliance, and on the way, I made a stop at my parents' home in the Bay Area. As soon as I entered, Emily rushed down from upstairs, looking haggard as if she hadn't slept for several nights. She threw herself in front of me, her voice sharp and piercing. "How dare you freeze Jason's account? Do you even know that we've mortgaged our house now?" I glanced at her dismissively. Under the guise of negotiating with Dingsa Investment, you tried to package a fake AI logistics concept company and successfively attempted to lure 5 funds into financing. Did you think I was a charity? We had no choice but to do that, she roared. That project was left to him by his father. We just wanted to turn things around. I cut her off coldly. The cost of turning things around can't be at the expense of others. Especially not me. Mother hurried out from the kitchen to smooth things over. "Vivian, Emily has been emotionally unstable lately, so please don't take it to heart. Jason was indeed at fault, but after all, he was your fiancé of 8 years. I interrupted her. "Mom, who is it that forced me to back out of the engagement back then? Who said I was unmarriageable and could only pick up Emily's messy divorce leftovers?" Her face stiffened. "You. Now that you're successful, you should be a little more forgiving." "Forgiving?" I laughed. "You're only regretting it now. When I was forced to sign the agreement to give up my shares and kicked out of the house I bought, why weren't you a little more forgiving toward me?" Emily rushed over and grabbed my hand. "How much money do you want to let us go?" "I don't want money." I pulled out a thick document from my bag and slapped it on the coffee table. "These are copies of all the evidence of the illegal financing of the Silverdrop logistics system that you and Jason jointly operated. I've made 3 backups and submitted them to the SEC, the state prosecutor's office, and Nathan's legal team." "You're insane," she screamed hoarsely. "Do you want to ruin us?" I looked at her calmly. "No, it was you who pushed me into the abyss first. No, I'm just following your script. But this time, it's a plot twist." She collapsed onto the sofa, her face deathly pale. I said no more and turned to leave. As she reached the door, Mother finally spoke up. "Vivian, do you really have to be this ruthless?" Without looking back, I replied, "I once begged you to leave me a little dignity, but you didn't. No, I'm taking it back for myself." That evening, Nathan held a board meeting in the drawing room of the Beverly estate. I sat by his side, participating for the first time as the head of investment for the East Asian market. The meeting was halfway through when Nathan opened a folder and said, "We're adding a last-minute agenda item regarding the recovery and liquidation of the Jason family's shareholding project." I looked up and saw that Lintex Logistics, controlled by Jason's side, had officially entered the merger and liquidation process. Everything was legal, thorough, and clean. The next day, Jason Home manipulates project data under SEC investigation made the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Emily fainted at her mother's home and was rushed to the University of California Medical Center. As soon as the news broke, the Chen family's group chat exploded with all kinds of discussions. How did it come to this? Vivian is just too ruthless. Emily is also unlucky. She took a wrong step. I saved these screenshots one by one and forwarded them to the secretary. Compile a list of these people's names and ban them from appearing in any of my future business or social occasions. He nodded. Understood. 3 days later, I went to report at the DZ Capital headquarters in New York. Just stepping out of the airport, I was surrounded by a group of reporters. "Vivian, how did you manage to reverse your social status in just 3 months? I heard you were betrayed by your fiancé and sister. Now that you've become the mistress of Dingsa, how do you feel? Do you think Jason's investigation has anything to do with you?" I stopped in my tracks, smiling directly at the camera. "I once lost everything, but fortunately, I met someone willing to fight alongside me. He isn't my savior. We are each other's armor." Applause, and the sound of camera shutters filled the air. That night back at the estate, Nathan and I sat on a garden bench, gazing at the stars. He suddenly asked, "Did you know Emily called me today?" I raised an eyebrow. "What did she want to say?" He said in a calm tone. "She said, she's just a substitute. I'm your real wife." "You're just taking revenge on her," I smiled. "How did you respond?" He looked at me and tightened his grip on my hand. "I told her, you're not worthy." A week after the wedding, Nathan suddenly suggested taking me to upstate New York, saying, "There's a place you should see." We took a helicopter over the Hudson River and landed 30 minutes later in front of a modern complex that resembled an estate. As I stepped off the helicopter, a reception team of security personnel and secretaries stood in 2 rows, creating a scene fit for welcoming a head of state. The doors opened, and a secretary said, "Welcome back to headquarters, Chairman and Mrs. Lin." Headquarters. I looked at Nathan. "Isn't your office in Manhattan?" He shook his head. "That was just our commercial building in New York. This is the core operational command center of Dingza. And it's also my real home." I was led into the main building. On both sides of the corridor, every office was equipped with trilingual secretaries. Each floor housed different investment departments, risk control and legal teams, fund analysts, and international consultants. Inside the meeting rooms, global financial markets were synchronized in real time, creating a tense yet orderly atmosphere. He took me into a secure data vault. After the heavy electronic door opened with a facial scan, the lights turned on, and I saw rows of safes, an entire wall of archives, and a central main control server. "This is the entire foundation I've built over the years," he said in a calm yet imposing tone. I was expelled from the family at my lowest point, starting with just 1 car and 2 people, and I gradually took everything back, one by one. I walked over and saw a thick folder, with the top page reading, "Mark Holdings Asset Inheritance Freeze Agreement, Signatory, Nathan." Mark, the founder of a global logistics and shipping empire, is also Nathan's father. I was originally his illegitimate child, he confessed. When I was 12, he sent me to the United States to work as an apprentice in a small company in Los Angeles. I kept waiting for him to acknowledge me, but what I ended up waiting for was his remarriage and the announcement of a new heir. I was silent for a long time. "What happened to you later?" I didn't wait. He closed the folder. I took it myself. He took me to a separate archive room, which contained all the corporate merger agreements, original investment contracts, and holding group share transfer records. In the center stood a long table. "I brought you here because, starting today, everything in this archive room is open to you. You are not my appendage, but half of this empire." I looked at him, hesitating for a moment. "Aren't you afraid I might betray you someday?" He chuckled lightly. "If you really take that step, then I'll accept it. It's a pity Emily doesn't understand. I gave her a chance once, and she chose to scheme." After returning to the estate, I opened my email and saw an anonymous message. "The Chen family is on the verge of collapse. After Jason was thoroughly investigated, Emily tried to reach out, wanting to sell the UFA brand trademark you once held, but she forgot. What you gave up that year was only the company shares, not the trademark ownership itself." I sneered and immediately contacted the secretary. "Prepare the documents. I'm going to personally take UFA back." UFA was a natural skincare brand I personally built in my early years. It started as a niche self-operated skincare line for women. Later, after Jason convinced me to bring in investment, he teamed up with Emily to package the brand and transfer it to a company under the Su family, forcing me to step down. That was the first time I was betrayed, and I almost lost everything when I left. Now they want to rely on this brand to make a comeback. No way. The next afternoon, I arranged a meeting with the chairman. He looked visibly guilty when he saw me and immediately said, "Vivian, it was Jason who made the decision back then. I just helped him with the process. We can discuss the trademark ownership issue again." I laid a complete intellectual property certificate in front of him. Since the establishment of the UFA brand, all its overseas trademark registrations and patent rights have always been under my personal account. What you transferred was just an empty shell. Vivian, you're with Dingza now. Surely you wouldn't hold a grudge over old accounts. Old debts need to be settled. I stood up. "Otherwise, no one will dare to discuss rules with me in the future." He froze on the spot and could only nod. "I'll handle it." 3 days later, I officially announced the return of the UFA brand. As soon as the news broke, Emily completely panicked. She tried to contact me multiple times, sending emails, voice messages, and even coming to my company to block my way. I ignored her until one day she waited outside my office building all night, her makeup smeared and her eyes wild as she blocked my car. "Vivian, I'm begging you, we're family. You can't really push us to this point." I looked at her through the car window and said, "I'm just following the script you gave me back then. Only I'm playing my part more seriously." "Jason is about to run away," she sobbed, tears streaming down her face. "He abandoned me, saying you're the one he feels most guilty about, that he missed his chance with you. I'm least in need of his guilt right now." That evening, Nathan and I had dinner in the Manor's reception hall. He handed me a document. "Jason is attempting to transfer some funds to the Cayman Islands. I've already had a lawyer freeze them." I glanced at the file, closed it, and said, "Then let him stay on the blacklist and never recover." "Where is Emily?" he asked. I remained silent for a moment, let her slowly watch me stand in a position she can't reach. "There's no need to touch her." Nathan nodded. He reached out and picked up his glass. "To you, Mrs. Lynn." I gently clinked my glass and softly replied, "To you, Mr. Lynn." Over the next 2 weeks, Emily was almost completely missing. Until late one night, while in the car on my way back, I came across a video on my feed. Outside a luxury flagship store on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, a disheveled Asian woman was sitting on the sidewalk, hysterically showing passersby photos on her phone. "She's my sister. She stole my husband. She took everything from me. How dare she?" The phone camera was shaky, but I recognized Emily at a glance. The top comment at the bottom of the screen was merciless. "Isn't that the crazy woman who showed up at the wedding of the female lead from Dingza? I heard she's the one who stole her sister's husband and then turned around to blame others. How shameless do you have to be to show up on Fifth Avenue and cry about being poor?" The next morning, before I could even speak, Nathan printed out that video and tossed it on the table. "Are you thinking of suing her?" he asked. "Unnecessary." I flipped through the documents. "Letting her continue her madness is more damaging than the law." The secretary stood nearby and reported, "Emily has been blacklisted by multiple luxury brands, and Jason has deleted his social media accounts, suspected to be handling immigration procedures." I nodded without saying a word. I didn't need to chase after them. I just had to stand still and watch them destroy themselves step by step. On Wednesday, I went back to my parents' home. Mother sat in the living room, peeling an orange while looking at me with a grave expression. "Vivian, Emily was truly wrong. She can't eat or sleep every day now, and it breaks my heart as her mother to see her like this." I looked at her without speaking. She paused, sighed, and said, "Your father isn't in good health now. You sisters shouldn't fight so fiercely. We don't ask for your forgiveness, only that you leave some room for compromise." I placed a document on the coffee table. Mother took it with trembling hands, and her expression changed instantly when she saw the title on the first page, "Chin Family Trust Financial Disclosure Review Report." This was the information I had my lawyer obtain, confirming that when I was forced to leave the Chin family and give up my shares, my parents, along with Emily and Jason, withdrew as much as $2 million from the trust account and falsified it as family living expenses. "You keep saying you want me to forgive you, but are you willing to return what is rightfully mine?" I asked softly. She was momentarily speechless. "I was forced to move out of Los Angeles back then and slept outside a San Francisco subway station for a night because you said I was disobedient, unfilial, and unworthy of living at home." I slowly stood up. "Now that you're old and starting to complain about pain and regret, can you ever repay my youth and trust?" She wanted to say something, but in the end, no sound came out. I picked up my bag and left without looking back. That evening, as soon as I arrived at the estate, Nathan took me to the backyard garden. "You've worked hard today," he said. "I've arranged a little something for you." The large screen ahead slowly lit up, playing old clips, me and Nathan visiting project sites, attending the Women's Entrepreneurship Fund Forum, and personally writing letters to the beneficiaries in private. The final scene was a shot of me standing at the entrance of the new headquarters of the UFA brand, cutting the ribbon. Below, there were nearly 100 female entrepreneurs who had once been suppressed by Emily, now standing up again to applaud for me. "You haven't just reclaimed your dignity in this world," Nathan whispered. "You've also fought for the pride of many others." My eyes grew a little warm. Just then, a bodyguard hurried over and said quietly, "Mrs. Lynn, someone has rushed to the estate's entrance and is very agitated." "Who?" I asked. "Emily." He paused. "She's outside, kowtowing and begging to see you, saying she just wants to speak a few words with you." I looked at Nathan, who didn't say much, only waved his hand lightly. "Let her kneel." 10 minutes later, I stood on the second-floor balcony, watching Emily kneel outside the iron gates of the estate through the railing. Her hair was a mess. Tear stains covered her face as she knelt on the concrete floor, kowtowing repeatedly. "Sis, Vivian, I was wrong. I was really wrong." I watched quietly, offering no response. She cried out again. "Jason ran off, took all my things. Mom and Dad don't want me anymore. I have nothing now. I'm really begging you." Just then, a man's voice spoke up. "Do you know how far you pushed her back then?" Its secretary, standing by the door, looking at her coldly. "She fell from a director position to working the night shift at a convenience store, and you said she was bringing shame to the Chin family. Now you're kneeling, thinking you can get everything back." Emily collapsed on the floor, her whole body drained of strength. I looked at her and said calmly, "You once stepped on me to climb up, and now that you've fallen, I won't help you up again." I turned and left, leaving only these words: "You don't deserve my forgiveness." I received Emily's last text message after she completely broke down. It was very short. Vivian, I really can't hold on anymore. Please save me this one time. 5 minutes after that message was sent, she was admitted to Manhattan Central Hospital, diagnosed with acute anxiety with severe sleep disorder, and at one point required 24-hour care. I didn't go to see her. 2 days later, as one of the founding representatives of a women's venture capital fund, I was invited to deliver a keynote speech at the Wall Street Women Leaders Annual Summit. The entire event was hosted by Bloomberg, and the audience was filled with top investors, venture capital advisors, government representatives, and dozens of female entrepreneurs from various countries. Standing in front of a giant LED screen, I shared my career growth journey. The final slide was a piece of footage I had deliberately saved for this day. The video showed surveillance footage from the day I was forced to leave the UFA brand. That day, I was escorted out of the office carrying 2 suitcases, with Jason's indifferent face and Emily's triumphant smile behind me. Then came the scene of me working the night shift at a convenience store in San Francisco, drinking saccharine-laced instant coffee alone at 3 a.m. After that, it was the filming of me relaunching the UFA brand and acquiring my first formula lab. The final words I slowly recited, "Thank you to those who once stepped on me, you made me who I am today." The venue erupted in applause, and all the cameras were focused on me. At that moment, Emily was hiding from debt collectors' calls in a hospital room, while I stood at the pinnacle of light, the highest point in the entire hall, back at Beverly Manor. As soon as I stepped into the study, I saw Nathan on a video call for an overseas meeting. He gestured for me to sit down and pushed a stack of documents on the desk toward me. "This is the list of the only remaining assets under your sister's name," he said calmly. "All the projects she mortgaged, borrowed against, and cashed out over the past 2 years have been recorded by the Federal Credit Department and will soon enter litigation." I glanced through the documents. The assets column was almost zero, while the debt figures were stacked high like building blocks, and, he continued, "Her parents have also reached out to me recently." "What did they say?" "They want you to step in and mediate, to help repay some of Emily's debts," they said. "After all, she is your sister." I closed the file and let out a cold laugh. I was once their daughter too, but they threw me out like trash. Nathan was silent for a moment. "So what do you plan to do?" I said softly. "I won't step in. The path she's taken to get here is one she chose herself." The following week, the Wall Street Women in Power list was released, and my name was ranked 7th. At the same time, a street-style photo went viral online. In the image, Emily is wearing a crumpled cotton t-shirt, setting up a stall selling jewelry at the Manhattan Union Square subway entrance, with a sign behind her, "Handmade earrings, $10 a pair." The top comment under that picture was the harshest, "Life is a game. And she started by cheating, now she's been kicked out." On the third day, I was invited to attend the Los Angeles Innovative Women's Business Exhibition. At the end of the event, the host handed me a greeting card with the word "thank you" written on it, saying it was submitted by an anonymous female audience member. I opened the card, and inside it read, "I've made many mistakes and once thought I could soar higher by stepping on you. Now I finally understand that you never relied on luck. You win because you deserve it, Emily." In that moment, I felt no joy, nor any pity. I simply tucked the card into my bag, as if completing a final act of letting go. In the evening, Nathan and I sat on the balcony. He asked me, "If you hadn't signed that prenuptial agreement that day, what would have become of us?" I thought for a moment and asked him in return, "Would you still marry me?" He nodded. "Yes, of course, but I would hold everything up before you even have a chance to fall." I looked up at the night sky, the starlight illuminating his face. He was still that silent, calm man who could shield me from the entire world. "You are the most important contract I've ever signed in my life," I said, half jokingly. "You're wrong," he whispered. "You are the one and only person in my life worth signing, sealing, and locking away in a safe." Nathan returned to the group headquarters to handle a new acquisition case, while I attended the Women's Financial Influence Summit in San Francisco. During the summit, I received a call from an unfamiliar number belonging to Jason. I didn't answer, and a few minutes later, I received a voice message. "Vivian, it's me, Jason. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I'm truly at the end of my rope. Emily has gone completely off the rails. She fell and got injured on the street and is still in the hospital. All our accounts have been frozen, and I've tried everything but can't save her. I was wrong to give up on you back then. Please save her just this once. Consider it the last emotional debt I owe you." I didn't reply. This phone call came too late and was too cheap. The emotional debt he mentioned was nothing more than the result of his unwillingness to give me an explanation when he betrayed me back then. 3 days later, I received a call from Nathan from New York. "Get ready, we're going back to Los Angeles together this weekend." "What happened?" "You have to see for yourself what the Chen family is like now." Early Saturday morning, Nathan and I returned to the old Chin family house in Los Angeles. Several men who looked like creditors were standing at the door, loudly banging and demanding money. Mother pushed the door open and cried, "Just a few more days, we really have no money, the bank has already seized the house." Nathan and I didn't use the front door. Instead, we went around to the second-floor balcony of the neighbor's house next door and watched the scene through a telescope. Nathan said calmly, "Their life now is 100 times worse than when you left home back then." I didn't say anything, just watched quietly. Suddenly, I saw Emily stumbling out of the house. She was wearing a dirty nightgown, her hair was disheveled, and she was clutching a worn-out makeup case, as if she was trying to escape, but she tripped and fell to the ground. She cried out, "I have no money left." Jason took the last of it. "Don't come looking for me anymore, I have nothing left." The neighbors all poked their heads out to watch. The sister who had once publicly mocked me at the engagement party, saying I was unwanted, now couldn't even manage to escape with dignity. I didn't show myself, nor did I disturb her. Back in the car, Nathan handed me a list. "Do you remember when you left the Chin family? I asked you what you wanted to keep." "I remember, now it's your turn to choose." The list contained a series of assets and items, including the Chin family's only ancestral property that had not been frozen, the last small fund equity in Jason's hands that had not been disposed of, and a 3-carat wedding ring under Emily's name that had not yet been sold, the very ring she had taken from my finger back then. I checked off each item one by one. "Take it all." The next day, the Los Angeles Times headline read, "Madam of Dingza Group reclaims all family rights and interests, Chin family completely bankrupt. Former elite family becomes a laughingstock." At the bottom was a street photo of Emily carrying her luggage into the shelter registration center. After the news broke, the relatives who had once sided with Emily all fell silent. Some deleted their old social media accounts, while others privately contacted me, hoping to reconcile. I had my secretary respond with a single sentence: "Since they chose to stand on the wrong side back then, they shouldn't think about coming back now." That evening, Nathan took me to the villa by the sea. "Would you like to see our future home?" I was taken aback for a moment, then followed him into the white wooden house. The interior was warmly decorated, with our wedding photos already hanging on the walls. On the mantelpiece in the living room, there was a photo of us, a candid shot of our backs taken during our first conference together. A year later, the Spring New York Women's Capital Forum was held, and I attended as the closing keynote speaker of the year. That day, I wore a clean and sharp white blazer dress, standing in the center of the stage, with my introduction projected on the large background screen. Vivian, CEO, DZ Capital Asia, founder, V Women Initiative, former founder of UFace Skincare, Forbes top 10 most influential women in finance. I didn't dwell much on the past, only saying one sentence: no one is a supporting character in life. The stage you choose to stand on determines what kind of protagonist you are. After the event, a young girl came up to the stage and said to me with a choked voice, "I've also been treated as a substitute in my family. After hearing your story, I know I'm not alone." I patted her on the shoulder and simply replied, "Remember, they belittle you because they're afraid you truly shine." On the day of the speech, I made the cover of Forbes magazine. The headline read, "From being forced to marry her sister's ex-husband to shaking up the capital markets, how Vivian Lin won this complete turnaround game." In the photo, I stood on the rooftop of a Manhattan skyscraper, with a golden skyline behind me. That evening, Nathan and I had dinner at the rooftop garden of the new headquarters. He handed me a gift, a new ring, simpler than the wedding band, but with an inscription on the inside: "You were never Plan B." I gently put it on. We no longer mentioned the past, Jason, Emily, or the Chin family. Those people had completely vanished from our world, like dried mud cracking and falling away, leaving not even a footprint. 3 months later, I returned to Taiwan as the founder of the V Women Fund, providing 100 million NTD in seed funding for local women's entrepreneurship programs. On the day of the ceremony, a middle-aged woman mingled in the crowd, trying to approach me. "Is my mother." She handed me a letter and said, "Your grandmother hasn't been well lately and really wants to see you once." I took the letter without opening it and handed it directly to my assistant beside me. "Send it to the legal team at my foundation, see if they're applying for family medical assistance funds." She froze, her eyes welling up with tears. "Vivian, we really are your parents, right?" I cut her off. "You used to be." She opened her mouth, wanting to say something more, but I just smiled faintly and said, "Thank you for abandoning me back then, otherwise, I wouldn't be where I am today." At that moment, dozens of media members behind me pressed their shutters, while she could only lower her head and slowly retreat into the crowd. A year later, Emily was spotted near a nightclub in Chicago, with blue-dyed hair, working at a car wash to make ends meet. She filed for bankruptcy protection, declaring assets of only $267. Her former mansion, jewelry, and luxury cars were all auctioned off to pay her debts. Jason moved to Thailand and completely cut off contact. The Chin family no longer had any presence in high society. Even their former relatives had cut off contact with them. Meanwhile, I became the first female executive director in Taiwan to lead a major overseas fund and was invited to participate in the United Nations Women's Economic Empowerment Program, Nathan, and I vacationed by the seaside in Italy once a year. He took me diving, horseback riding, and skydiving, treated me to Michelin-starred restaurants he couldn't afford in his youth, and even secretly rented out an entire island to celebrate my birthday. Every time I take off, I look out the window and remember the first helicopter that landed just for me. It wasn't about ceremony, it was the beginning of respect. I know my story has been passed around by many as a revenge comeback, but all I want to say is, it's not that I relied on a man to turn my life around, it's that I chose someone who deserves to share in my journey of mutual success. He was never my lifeline, but rather my comrade standing by my side through life's storms. And I am no longer the woman standing in the corner of the wedding banquet, mocked as unwanted. I am Vivian Lin. I have reclaimed my role as the protagonist of my own life, and never stepped down.